Uh, Thanks, Gary and Harry, for organizing this. It would be wonderful to see everybody in person, but obviously it is what it is. Thank you for trying to make it work in this format. Obviously, my talk will be under the rubric of language and cognition, and specifically under the question that Gary posed, how much work is language doing in cognitive development? And I would just elaborate and what this work might be. And some of the answers uh, have been given already, and some of them were in Gary's talk. So some possible answers are language denotes existing concepts, or language directs cognition by carving the world at the possible joints. Uh, Without disputing any of these possibilities, I suggest a different possibility. The possibility that at least somewhat different from the other two. And that is that often language makes this wonderful work of creating concepts. And this happens in particular when concepts have non-existing or unobservable reference. So let me first go through the list of these interesting concepts, and then I would try to suggest an idea of how this could be done. So there are imaginary entities such as ghosts. There are past and future reference such as yesterday or tomorrow. Obviously, mental states such as doubt, desire, or belief, truth values, latent constructs, uh, relational concepts such as equivalence, invariance, or odd numbers, and among them are higher nodes of taxonomies, such as animals and living things. Obviously, there have been multiple attempts to solve these problems by finding uh, higher order similarities, visual similarities, or perceptual similarities in things like living things or animals. But this seems to be quite difficult, whereas language can do it in an almost effortless manner. So how does language do that? So it does it by first denoting unobservable concept, providing it with a label, but that's definitely not enough. And secondly, by providing the structure that enables the learner to infer the meaning of the concept without necessarily observing its referent. So here in this talk, I will consider a case of superordinate concepts, but I presume that we can try to go further with that. So how can language give rise to such concepts? So the target idea was proposed a few years back in our paper in cognitive psychology. And I will just walk you through the underlying idea, which is fairly simple, and then make a few comments and talk about new data. And the underlying idea is that there are multiple regularities in language. Some of them are what we refer to as direct or first order links that are based on direct co-occurrence. So think about something like spaghetti and plate. So in many sentences, you have co-occurrences of words such as spaghetti and plate. And so they may become linked together, and they give rise to thematic or contextual relatedness. And because they can be inferred directly from the input, they appear early in development. But then there are also derived or second order links that are not linked directly, but that share patterns of co-occurrence. So imagine that you have something like spaghetti and plate that are linked directly, and something like pie and plate that are also linked directly. Even though spaghetti and pie may not be similar at all and may never appear or almost never appear in the same sentence, they share pattern of co-occurrences, so something like second order regularities, and that gives rise to taxonomic relatedness. And so the idea is that this taxonomic relatedness should appear later in development because you really need to integrate across first order co-occurrences. And in this paper, we had much supporting evidence, multiple experiments, and a model. I will just give you a real taste of the experiments. Experiments were really simple. You give subjects a list of words. Some of them have thematic co-occurrence with among themselves, so they all have forward associative strength with the word animal, but they're also related to animal thematically, such as zoo, furry, feeding, and then you plant an unfamiliar word dex, and then you ask subjects for the meaning of the word dex, or you give them a taxonomic list. And so what happened was that the inference of what the word dex means was evident in both children and adults when they were presented with this contextual lists, but it transpired only in adults when they were subjects were presented with taxonomic lists. And so a really simple, very simple model that was based on forward associative strength was able to predict subjects' performance better than really powerful Bayesian models that couldn't possibly handle failures. And we also proposed a really simple model where a network that was based on second order irregularities took input from the network that was based on first order irregularities. And this work suggests an important theoretical possibility, and that is that taxonomic or derived or second order relations may emerge on the basis of co-occurrence or direct relations. And so then we conducted some subsequent research in which we focused on the emergence of co-occurrence based and taxonomic links among familiar concepts, and I will talk about it today, and then the emergence of these direct and second order links among novel concepts. And if I will run out of time, I just wanted to say that both lines of work support the idea that derived or second order or taxonomic relations can and in all likelihood do emerge on the basis of direct or co-occurrence ones. So one piece of evidence comes from our recent paper in cognition. And here we identified pairs of items that were well familiar to 4-year-olds. They came from production norms and that reliably co-occur or taxonomically related or unrelated. 3 minutes or 5? Gary, is it 3? Okay. So I will speed it up a little bit. Familiar words were identified from production norms. Co-occurrence was calculated on the basis of mutual information, and taxonomic relatedness was calculated on the basis of similarity in meaning measured from WordNet. So we tried to create 3 mutually exclusive classes. So they either were high on co-occurrence or high on taxonomic relatedness or unrelated. And here are examples of words. So those that are based on co-occurrence would be something like bottle and baby, foot and shoe. Those that are taxonomically related would be something like pig and bear, or ball and puzzle. And unrelated would be something like balloon and tree. And in one experiment, we tried to examine cued recall, and there were 3 conditions. So one condition was the co-occurrence condition. So here, subjects would be presented with words that frequently co-occurred, like baby and bottle, and then tested. And in taxonomic, they would be presented like with taxonomically related words like pig and bear. And in an unrelated condition, they will be presented with unrelated words. And we had 4 to 5-year-olds and adults, and we had these 3 within subject conditions. So let me briefly present you with results. So there was baseline recall for unrelated words. In children, taxonomic words didn't do much in terms of taxonomically related, in terms of promoting recall, but co-occurrence related did promote recall, whereas in adults, you see both promoting recall. The second paradigm was match verification. And here we had a task that consisted of a sanity check and a real task. So in the sanity check, and this is match verification task, subjects are presented with a word, let's say baby, then they're given a picture, and they needed to say whether the word and the picture denote the same word. And the sanity check are always identity pairs, but an interesting condition is where the correct response is no. And here, the word and the picture could be either co-occurring, taxonomically related, or unrelated. And what we measure here is the amount of interference, because if these links exist, there should be interference compared to unrelated condition. And so here, what we see is that in children, these are response times. Interference emerges only in the co-occurrence condition, whereas in adults, we observe interference in both conditions. So I suspect that I'm out of time. I will not go through the formation of novel words. I will just summarize that we ran an experiment where subjects were presented with stories, and the stories had this hidden structure where there were both direct and second order co-occurrences. And so we tested them with a number of tasks, including label extension task and priming task. And 4 to 5-year-olds exhibited evidence of forming only direct co-occurrence links, whereas adults formed both kinds of links. And in adults, forming of direct links preceded the formation of derived taxonomic links. And I would like to summarize that it is possible that language may be doing much invisible work in cognitive development, and this invisible work may consist in providing a really rich structure, enabling people to infer meaning of abstract concepts where reference are either absent, unobservable, or do not share perceptual similarity. So I will stop here.
Great, thanks.
Thanks,
Vladimir. Yeah, so we have a minute or just a minute or so for questions.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if how you're thinking about the differences between the kid data and the adult data, and how much of them is due to just basic size of the lexicon differences, or if you think there's some, so is an adult just like a 4-year-old except they have a bigger vocabulary, or is there more underlying the differences?
Well, for familiar concepts, or for familiar lexical items, I should say, I think that it is not just the size of the lexicon. Well, it should be the size of the corpus plus the time you experience this corpus. So for the novel, it couldn't be the size of the corpus. So it should also be some ability to integrate across the episodes, because obviously the words that we introduced, like Fugly and Dodish and Nip and Gek, couldn't be in the lexicon. So whether or not the ability to integrate across episodes and form second order links is itself based on the size of vocabulary, or it is a function of maturation of something else, that I don't know. This is an important open question.
All right, does anyone have a short question?
I could ask a question, but only if other people don't have any questions.
Go ahead.
So this is sort of more high level, but if one interpretation of saying that language creates these concepts is that the cognitive computations that build these concepts occur in a linguistic medium and not in a language of thought, right? And that is quite different from saying that language is from communicating content across minds, but within a mind, all of this composition that is necessary for building new concepts from existing primitives occurs in the language of thought and not in language itself, right? So how would you distinguish these two, or what's your position on that?
Well, you try to box me into something that that already exists, and so you force me to take sort of a position in the dichotomy that I may not fully understand. So I think that whether you consider language as completely disjoint, like language of language, as communicative system, as completely disjoint from language of thought or not, it is a system that is rich in structure. So whether or not this structure is capable of forming some really interesting things in the language of thought, in something that you refer to language of thought, that I don't know, but I think that for me, it is sort of clear that it has a sufficient structure to start this process and to support the process of forming this abstract concept.
Well, I mean, it must, because it has to reflect thought. Otherwise, we couldn't communicate with one another.
Yes. So then it makes me wonder how productive is the distinction between the communicative system and language of thought.
Okay. I mean, I think it's very productive, but that's for maybe for the breakout.
Okay.